Good afternoon. It's the 24th of July. The month is slowly winding down, but the news never sleeps. And here at KTN Newsdesk, we bring it to you as it happens. My name is Edith Kimani.
That's right. It's called KTN Newsdesk, and this is the 24th day of July. I almost said August. My name is Bulletin. We have a lot in store for you, including the following.
The 4 terror suspects arrested in Majengo are charged with possession of explosives and bang.
Civil society protest against changes in the domestic violence bill.
Also in this bulletin, simmering row over revenue collection at the Maasai Mara game resort. And we kick off this bulletin in the courts where 4 people were this morning arraigned before the Milimani Chief Magistrate and charged with terror-related offences.
The 4, who included a woman and 3 men, were found in possession of 62 pieces of commercial magnum explosive gel tubes in contravention of the Terrorism Act.
They were also accused of being in possession of 34 tons of bang and 8 kilograms with a street value of 100,000 shillings.
Mohamed Yusuf Golova, Jibril Kiama Musundi, Julius Kariuki and Monaidi Wanjiku were arrested after a tip-off from the public on the 19th of July in Majengo slums in Nairobi. Residents there had noted suspicious activities and called in the police, who arrested the 4 who were trying to assemble the material. They were handed over to the anti-terror police unit. The 4 denied the charges before Chief Magistrate Anandungu and were denied bail and remanded for 7 days at the Kilimani police station until July 30th, when their case will be back in court. One of them, who is said to be from Uganda, was also charged for being in the country unlawfully. The arrest and subsequent arraignment comes at a time when insecurity is the biggest headache for a government that seems unable to contain the spate of attacks in several parts of the country. Over 100 people have lost their lives in the past 1 month alone due to terror-related attacks that have seen the government receive a lot of criticism, with leaders calling for the sacking of both the Interior Cabinet Secretary and the Inspector General for failing to stop the attacks and secure Kenyan borders. It is also one of the issues cited by CORD on their calls for referendum. Linda Ogutu, KTN.
Also, the civil society is protesting against amendments effected in the domestic violence bill. Led by FIDA Executive Director Christine Ochieng, the group staged a protest march from Freedom Corner to the Uhuru Park and to Parliament.
Now, they're against the removal of some clauses in the bill, which they term as critical. Now, they presented a petition to members of Parliament seeking the reinstatement of the removed sections.
Right, the petition was received by nominated Member of Parliament Johnson Sakaja and Minority Chief Whip Chris Omalo.
We are pleading with the members of Parliament to ensure that we have a holistic bill. A bill that captures not only all the actors in a domestic arena, that is both brings in all the definition of who is in a domestic arena, be it the parents, the children, the grandparents, or even the workers who work within the domestic arena. This bill should have that definition.
This is not a gender issue. This is a family issue.
Thank you.
And we are all part of family, a family setting one or another.
When it comes to the floor of the House, we are going to debate and we're going to pass a resolution. So you don't need to worry about that. Wow. So all those amendments that you want, we are going to move them on the floor of the House, and I have no doubt that members of Parliament are going to support this so that you can pass a law that is going to be there for posterity.
Quite a number of promises regarding that bill. Well, we'll definitely wait to see how it pans out in Parliament.
But the support is also great, especially from the male members of the House.
Well, they did say it's not a gender issue, so let's see how that works out. But let's cross over to the Maasai Mara, where a fresh row is brewing in Narok. And this is after the Narok County government contracted the services of the Kenya Airports Authority to collect parking fees through the e-ticketing system.
Right, however, the Narok elders argue that the process is flawed. They say it lacks public participation. The leaders now want the KAPS contract revoked to pave way for fresh applications.
Now, the Maasai Mara generates revenues of up to 2 billion shillings annually.
What is worrying us is why would you now turn few months after terminating and illegally terminating the equity agreement? What is the justification for giving another entity to collect the same revenue?
The next story is more than likely going to rub women leaders in particular the wrong way, because the women leaders, as I mentioned, in county assemblies have been urged to actively participate in development projects.
The Association of Media Women in Kenya says that most women MCAs have left the active participation of county governance to the men.
The association has launched a project to promote women's engagement in county governance. AMWIK was established in 1983 to address gender issues in media.
Statistics show that women are covered only at 17% nationally against men who are about 77%. And so we need to make sure that we are seeing women coming in as news sources. So as AMWIK, we are building the capacity of women leaders, political leaders at national level and also at county level, so that we make sure that they are visible within the media.
The problem with our participation, we do participate very well, but the problem is when at times we contribute towards this budget, you find that the elected members, they try to fight against us in that they are saying we don't have vote heads or we don't have wards which we do represent back in the grassroots. In that we face that big challenge.
Well, our MCAs in the ground, we're not seeing them work actually. Yes, a few of them may be vocal, a few of them may be giving voices out here, a few of them may be giving directions, a few of them may be actively involved, but the majority of them are just lying there in the background, waiting for other people to push issues before they get onto them. For instance, it's very rare in Kisii to find the women MCAs standing out on their own and addressing a matter as the lady MCAs in the county assembly. Rather, they rely on the men to push for the issues first before they come from behind to back these men. But we're not having anyone definitively standing out and
Great. From that harsh indictment upon women leaders, let's go across borders. And a grieving nation welcomed home the bodies of nearly 200 Dutch citizens killed when Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 was shot down. Meanwhile, the finger pointing continues over who's responsible. Here's more.
The first of the bodies recovered from the Malaysia Airlines plane crash arrived in the Netherlands on Wednesday, greeted by the country's Prime Minister, King and Queen, and mourning family members. The country held a moment of silence to honor the 298 people killed, 193 of whom were Dutch citizens. Meanwhile, the war of words continues between Russia and Ukraine over who is responsible for the tragedy. Ukraine's director of informational security said his country has no doubt who's to blame.
A Russian-trained, well-equipped, well-educated officer.
Who pushed that button?
Who pushed that button.
But Russia continues to deny any direct involvement in the attack, instead suggesting a Ukrainian fighter jet may be responsible. The White House says,
we know that the Ukrainians didn't have any of those kinds of missiles anywhere near range, and indeed haven't used any anti-aircraft missiles during this conflict.
And adding to the growing tension, on Wednesday, 2 Ukrainian military jets were shot down in the eastern part of the country. Ukraine's government says preliminary evidence shows the attack may have originated in Russia. Criticism of Russia from at least one U.S. lawmaker was swift.
I want the Russian people to feel pain in response to the pain they've caused. I want to put sanctions on their economy so they understand that what Putin's doing is not good for them long term.
In Washington, I'm Tori Dunnan reporting.
A tragedy that will more than likely remain raw until the person who was responsible for pulling the trigger is identified. But let's cross over to a conflict, this one in Gaza. And there's a push to get international flights into Israel again after the FAA barred U.S. carriers from flying to Tel Aviv. And as the violence in the Middle East drags on, Andrew Spencer reports the death toll unfortunately continues to climb.
With many international flights through Tel Aviv on hold, the Israeli government asked the FAA to reconsider.
This is a major setback from Israel. It is a big hit to the Israeli economy and to our pride that we could have hold and maintain the aerial traffic to and from Israel.
U.S. Airways announced it would resume flying to and from Israel on Thursday, pending FAA approval. The Federal Aviation Administration barred U.S. airlines from flying to Tel Aviv for at least 24 hours after a rocket struck close to the airport.
The Iron Dome system, the anti-missile system, is calibrated to target certain missiles and to ignore certain missiles. We're not going to ignore any missiles that are headed for an area, for a place that we don't want them to land.
Hamas maintains rockets into Israel are a response to the Israeli operations in Gaza. The bloodshed drags on, with more deaths on both sides. In Gaza City, it's not uncommon to see rubble or hear the sounds of war. UN relief workers in Gaza said they found themselves between Israeli soldiers and Hamas fighters, with neither side showing any sign of backing down.
We hope that we can achieve a ceasefire. Our position is clear. There is a Palestinian demand. We want it to be part of the agreement of the ceasefire, opening the borders, ending the siege on the Palestinians.
Through more than 2 weeks of conflict, the IDF says 29 Israeli soldiers and 2 Israeli civilians have been killed. Palestinian health officials say more than 630 Palestinians have been killed. The UN believes between 70 and 80% of them were civilians. I'm Andrew Spencer reporting.
A conflict that a lot of people hope is not going to be drawn out. But speaking of drawn out, another drawn out execution has reignited controversy over lethal injections.
Some witnesses describe a man gasping for air as he was put to death in Arizona on Wednesday.
It was tough for everybody in that room. And at a certain point, you wondered if he was ever going to die.
Joseph Wood, convicted of murder and sentenced to death, put to death in a process which took nearly 2 hours.
He was gasping for air. He was struggling to breathe. He was moving up on the restraints.
To watch a man lay there for an hour and 40 minutes gulping air, I can liken it to if you catch a fish and throw it on the shore, the way the fish opens and closes its mouth.
The Department of Corrections says Wood was unconscious the entire time. Wood was convicted of the 1989 killings of his estranged girlfriend and her father. He received no sympathy Wednesday from a relative of his victims.
Everybody here, from what I heard, said it was excruciating. You don't know what excruciating is. What's excruciating is seeing your dad lying there in a pool of blood, seeing your sister lying there in a pool of blood. That's excruciating. This man deserved it.
A similarly drawn-out execution in Oklahoma this year raised concerns about the drugs now used in lethal injections, with other countries refusing to export sodium thiopental to the United States for use in executions.
The 2 drugs worked. He eventually died, but I can't imagine this is what the criminal justice system had hoped for when they came up with this new drug protocol.
Wood's lawyer says Wood was concerned the Department of Corrections would be experimenting on him. A relative of his victims takes issue with that entire conversation.
Well, why didn't we give him a bullet?
I'm Andrew Spencer reporting.
That's a catch-22, isn't it?
I don't get it. If the whole idea was to kill him, it took 2 hours.
That's why I'm saying it's a catch-22. You want to serve out the highest possible form of justice, but you don't want it to be painful and drawn out.
But you still want to kill him.
Well, I'm not in the legal department, thank God, nor am I in the justice department. So that's that. These are the stories for the first half hour. When we come back...
Right, when we come back, we'll talk to you about safe transaction using your cards. I have a gentleman from KenSwitch who will help us unpack all that.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're watching KTN Newsdesk. If you're seated here, you know we are having our afternoon business chat. But before that, the National Social Security Fund will start paying interest on contributions made by workers into the fund. NSSF today announced that contributions will now earn 12.5% on their contributions in an effort to give members higher returns upon retirement. Now, this comes as the pension fund implements the NSSF Act, which hopes to raise savings by 40 billion shillings as workers contribute more into the fund. Now, the news comes as NSSF reported it grew its funds under management by 22% to 135 billion shillings in the last financial year. A realignment of its portfolio to comply with legal provisions, capping investments in land and property at just 25%, and has seen NSSF shift focus to other asset classes such as stocks, government securities, and commercial paper with a combined value of over 87 billion shillings. Great, so that has been NSSF. Let's talk a little bit more about payments and how safe are your card transactions. Well, recently, through the Bankers Association, the central bank pushed for a shift from the old system of payment to the new PIN system. But that is not enough because KenSwitch is trying to make that even safer and faster. And George Wainaina joins me. George Wainaina is the MD for KenSwitch. Karibu sana.
Asante.
You have a pretty ambitious product here, domestic interbank transfer service.
Yes.
What's that about?
The domestic interbank transfer service is a service that came off the back of agency banking.
Right.
About 3 years back, the Central Bank of Kenya decided that commercial banks need to expand their footprint in terms of ensuring that we have financial inclusion.
Right.
And looking at the success of the mobile operators, decided to have agency banking. Now, the premise around agency banking was that the customer's account had to be credited on a real-time basis. That meant that the customers could go to an agent and say, I want to deposit money into my account. And because of the nature of the agency banking, we as KenSwitch sat and looked at what was happening within the system. On one end, we were having a customer's account which was being debited, and on another one, it was being credited. So we said, why don't you put that together and create a system where you can transfer money from one account to another, but across banks.
Judge, how exactly does this work? Do I need an extra card?
No, the way the system has been built, it works. It works on the existing infrastructure. So, from a cardholder's perspective, if you have a card from your bank and you want to transfer money, let's say you're at ABC Bank and you want to move money to KCB, you put in your card that has been issued by ABC Bank into the ATM. When you go to the ATM, you have a screen that shows you the list of banks that are participating within the platform. You specify KCB. And you put in the amount, the account that you want to send the money to, and the amount.
Right.
And that transaction goes across and credits the other account within 6 seconds.
Question everyone should be having is that, is there some special rate to this? Is there an asterisk, some, fine print that probably I'll be charged more for this service?
When we looked at the other instruments that are there, if you want to move money interbank right now, you can either send an RTGS, which takes about 2 hours, or an EFT, which takes about a day, or alternatively write a check. And those instruments are priced at up to even up 500 shillings per transaction. Well, we've gone in very aggressively into with this particular system, and you move money between 50 shillings and 1 million shillings for as little as starting from 5 shillings to a maximum of 200 shillings. So it's very cost effective from the consumer's point of view.
How safe is this?
Well, the system is built on, we use the same chip and pin. I think the industry has been rolling out chip and pin for the last 1 year. So it utilizes the same infrastructure as the current ATM cards, which have EMV, and so it's an EMV compliant system. So it is very secure. All the information that's going through the system is encrypted. So from a consumer's point of view, there's not much you have to worry about.
George, you're operating in a space that is very dynamic. Recently, we've seen the introduction of the virtual mobile operators, where the banks are now trying to get a piece of mobile money transfer. What's in this for you? How secure is your space and your participation in this, especially in view of mobile money transfer?
When you look at this platform that we've set up, the beauty of it is I've mentioned that you can do it at an ATM, but some of the larger operators, the banks in the market, are looking at it in terms of how can we facilitate or enable our mobile banking platforms to move money interbank. So for us, it's something that is very complementary. We don't own the end customer points. We don't interact directly with the customers. Our focus as KTN is to talk to the commercial banks, look at where they're moving in terms of their business, and see how our platform can facilitate what they want to achieve, especially in terms of payments for their customers. So it's a good fit for us.
Right. Going forward, George, what do you see as the next step in regards to cashless transactions? Because that is the space which everyone is moving into. Nairobi is now cashless. Matatu rides are cashless. What opportunities do this kind of trend, does it offer to people like you?
It's interesting you should mention the Matatu sector. We are in partnership with a company called PesaPrint, and they have deployed terminals within the Matatu sector that facilitate the use of what we're calling tap and go technology, where as a customer of a Matatu, you don't have to have cash. You buy those cards and you can load them off a platform, the domestic interbank transfer platform, because it allows the transfer of cash from your account into your prepaid card. So from a consumer's perspective, your bank account is not exposed. What you have is a prepaid card which uses tap and go technology, which you can load for, let's say for 1 week you put 1,000 shillings for your fare for that 1 week, and you can use it on the Matatu. So as KTN, we are facilitating the Matatu industry to move towards a cash-light payment system.
In about 30 seconds, George, what are the challenges facing this new way of doing business?
I think when you look at the industry is in terms of ensuring that all partners, all banks are participating at the same time. We have challenges in terms of the communication links, but we have ways to ensure that from an industry perspective, those are being addressed. We are talking with the telecommunication companies to ensure that they provide good uptimes, because remember, these are done on a real-time basis, and if the communication links are not up, then it becomes difficult to deploy the services.
Great. That's a good place to wind up. George Wainaina is the MD KTN, talking to us about the domestic interbank transfer service. It's the latest in the market. Go check it out, try it out. Let's see what all that it's about. He says it's very safe, Edith.
It's an interesting time for Scotland, right? They're 2 months away from a referendum that could decide whether or not they secede from the United Kingdom.
It should be nice of them to stay. Economically, safer there. Right, but Edith, to matters, conversation that a lot of people are having on Twitter. The unemployment summit is currently ongoing in Nairobi, and people are making a lot of noise about the choice of venue because it is at the Kempinski Villa Rosa, and they're saying the people who are being targeted for this thing may never get entrance into the venue.
The height of irony, some of them are calling it.
Right.
Well, we have time for our Did You Know fact, which is also ironic. In 1880, there was a queen in Thailand. Her name was Sunanta. She drowned during a journey to the palace, but even though she was surrounded by people, they couldn't help her because at the time there was a law forbidding people from touching the royals, which is strange because in Europe there was a complete opposite of that. It was called a royal touch, where French and English monarchs would touch people of all classes to help them and save them from diseases such as tuberculosis and something interesting called scrofula.
See what that law got her.
Well, it depends whether you want to be touched by the king or not touched by the king. That's your Did You Know fact. I doubt it's going to help you ever in your life, but that's it. My name is Edith Kimani. Good afternoon.
My name is Bulletin. I'll see you again for business.